Hello, welcome to the next segment of this year's webinar. We will be discussing what future health professionals should know about loneliness and social isolation in older adults. We have several wonderful speakers who will be addressing us today. So my name is Morgan O'Laughlin. I'll be moderating. And then our experts are Jessica Thomas, Kelsey Heiner, and Caitlin Bird. So just an overview of our agenda. First, we'll take a look at the results of the poll that we conducted from the audience before this event. And then we'll be privileged to hear from our three experts, and they will be speaking on the signs of loneliness in the elderly, the causes for loneliness and social isolation, as well as the effects, and then how we can prevent and alleviate this issue. After that, we'll have a short quiz, and then we'll have time left over for the audience to ask questions. So first, we'll look at the results of our poll. So we asked you all to rate how much you agreed with some statements that relate to this topic. So the first one is, I find it more difficult to build friendships as I get older. And you can see that most, but not everyone, agreed with this statement. And then on to our next question. Our next statement was, having some form of connection helps me thrive and survive. And for the results, you can see that this was unanimous, that everyone either agreed or strongly agreed with this statement. And then finally, social isolation and loneliness can lead to physical health problems. And this one was also unanimous. Everyone agreed with this statement as well. And so now we will have the privilege to hear from our three experts.
Thanks. So just a little bit of background on the effects of loneliness on the elderly. As we all know, humans are social creatures. Our connections to others enable us to thrive and survive. And as we get older, it can become more and more difficult to connect and to maintain relationships, which can oftentimes lead to feelings of vulnerability, loneliness, and even isolation. Loneliness can also lead to physical health related problems. And there is a difference between loneliness and social isolation. Loneliness is a subjective assessment that social relationships are lacking, while social isolation is objective. It's that deficit in connections to family, friends, or the community around you.
All right, so some signs of loneliness could include changes in appetite, which could include eating less, being uninterested in food or overeating, and also anger, which could be related to being embarrassed about feeling alone, misunderstood, or unheard. Changes in sleeping patterns, increased buying habits, and taking more hot baths, which is associated with the physical warmth of comfort, and then an increase of internet use as a tool to connect with others. And then some reasons for loneliness could include the fact that social circles shrink with time. Due to retiring, bringing more free time for hobbies or relaxation, it also ends up ending more meaningful interactions that they have with colleagues on a daily basis. And then they can also find themselves unexpectedly alone due to friends and family members moving or people passing away. Another reason would be feeling embarrassed due to the chronic medical conditions and logistical challenges that come with leaving the house. And then other age-related concerns, which include hearing loss, and then eye diseases and more obvious signs of aging.
So loneliness can affect our mental and emotional health, and it can also affect our physical health. According to a meta-analysis conducted in 2018 measuring loneliness and mortality, it was confirmed that feeling lonely is a risk factor for all-cause mortality for both males and females. So loneliness actually acts as a fertilizer for many diseases. Some of these diseases could include high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, a weakened immune system, anxiety, depression, and so on. Loneliness actually has the ability to alter the tendency of our cells within our immune system function to promote inflammation. However, if inflammation lasts too long, it increases our risk of chronic diseases. This could lead to an accelerated buildup of plaque in our arteries, cancer cells spreading and growing faster than they normally would, and the promotion of inflammation in the brain that could lead to Alzheimer's disease. And among all this, Of course, this would lead to feelings of insecurity, whether we're feeling mentally or emotionally ill, or these impacts that it can have on our physical health.
So there are many ways to prevent social isolation and loneliness, but I will just highlight a few. It's important that we take it one conversation at a time, so just being there to listen and offer reassurance. Pets can help reduce blood pressure and ease emotional pain, and there are places that offer pet therapy sessions. Another form of therapy involves journaling, breathing, and relaxation techniques. There are also social and support groups, and there are some organizations that help offer resources like the Social Work License Map and MonaMe, which was created by Stanford, and they help connect students to older adults. And they help recognize the stigma of loneliness and as well as build relationships and community. And another organization I wanted to highlight was the Cares Family, which is based out in London.
Our big cities are amazing. They're full of history, culture, innovation, and people from all over the world. But as our modern world moves at breakneck speed, our cities can also leave us feeling anonymous, isolated, and lonely. This is the case for millions of older people, who can have deep roots in their communities, but few connections. And for younger people, who often have hundreds of connections, but fewer roots in their communities. That's why the Cares family brings older and younger neighbours together to share time, laughter and friendship. Neighbours share new experiences in groups, through dance parties, desert island disc nights, local business visits and more. And they share friendship one-to-one, bringing the outside world in for people who can struggle to get out. Through those relationships, older and younger people feel confidence, community, and connection. And they feel valued and visible, part of our changing cities, rather than left behind by them.
All right, thank you. Pay attention because now we're going to have a short quiz on what we just learned. So the questions are: true or false, social isolation is a subjective physical separation from other people. Which of the following are signs of loneliness in the elderly? Which university created MonaMe to help college students connect with older adults? And true or false, loneliness affects our biology. Take a second and think of your answers. So the first one is false. Social isolation is objective, not subjective. Number 2, all of the above are signs of loneliness in the elderly. Number 3, Stanford was the university that created MonaMe. And finally, the last one is true. Loneliness does affect our biology. And so now before we wrap up, we're going to give you all a chance to ask experts any questions you may have. And so you can go ahead and type them in the chat. And our first question just came in. Are social isolation and loneliness dependent on each other?
This is a good question. I would say they're mostly independent from each other. So a person who may live alone wouldn't necessarily feel lonely or socially isolated, but they could feel lonely when they're surrounded by family and friends. So I would say they're independent of each other.
Awesome. The next question is, why is socializing important?
I think socializing is really important because, as we kind of talked about in this webinar, humans are social creatures. In order to thrive and survive, we need to have some form of social connection. And so it's really important to learn how to maintain those relationships, especially as we age, because the impact that they have on our mental, physical, and emotional health is really huge.
Thanks, Jessica. Our next question is, how have you seen loneliness and social isolation affect a loved one?
I'm happy to take this one too. I have some family members. My grandparents, they live in a rural community in the deep south in Mississippi. And when the pandemic hit, it hit them pretty hard because they were already kind of isolated from their communities, but suddenly they couldn't go to church anymore and they were too afraid to go to the grocery store. And so things just kind of became real really quickly for them. And they felt really isolated from their friends and other loved ones. But kind of as Caitlin pointed out, that one of the kind of coping mechanisms that we have with loneliness is animals. My family actually got my grandparents a dog during this time, and I feel like this dog has made all the difference for them. I mean, they are so happy and they love this dog so much, and I feel like it has honestly lengthened their lifespan just being able to have this connection with this animal. So
I love that. Thank you. So finally, our last question is, in situations like the COVID-19 pandemic, how can we find balance between keeping the elderly safe through social distancing without causing social isolation?
I can take this one. That's also a really great question. I believe it's important right now that we make sure that our older population continues to stay connected and continue to build their social relationships. One thing that's been really big lately is introducing them to technology. So, like video calls, or even making them like a Facebook account just so that they can connect with other people just like them. And then, if permissible, you can also rearrange in person meetings or meetups so that they can get that social interaction.
Thank you. So those were all the questions. But we would like to thank you all for participating today, and also a special thank you to our guest speakers for being here with us. Thank you.